1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 21 through 27. The eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you. And the head cannot say to the feet, I don't need you. On the contrary, those parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable. And the parts that we think are less honorable, we treat with special honor. And the parts that are unpresentable are treated with special modesty, while our presentable parts need no special treatment. But God has put the body together, giving greater honor to the parts that lacked it, so that there be no division in the body, but that its parts should have equal concern for each other. If one part suffers, every part suffers with it. If one part is honored, every part rejoices with it. Now you are the body of Christ, and each one of you is a part of it. So Paul is wrapping up his kind of picture of the body. He'll continue this all the way down to verse 31. But in this discussion that we've been going through of the body of Christ, we see just a lot of good in this metaphor. I would encourage you just to dwell on the metaphor of the church as the body of Christ. It will yield many treasures to you. So let's begin. He starts off in this first section with a sort of hypothetical illustration from the body, right? So we are the body, and therefore the eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you, and the head cannot say to the feet, I don't need you. And obviously these aren't, it's not necessary as we go through these examples to overly define the eye as a role or as a person or as a gift. You don't have to choose between those things. Whether it's one role in the body saying to another role in the body, I have no need of you, or one person with a gift saying to another person with a gift, I have no need of you, or just one person in the body saying to another person, I have no need of you. However it shows up, this remains true. And so if it's true for this, it's also true for this, it's also true for this. I think it's an important thing for us to understand as we get into it, because you can run into a lot of trouble if you go too narrow on your interpretation of this. Paul is making a illustration, right? And illustrations can be sometimes applied truthfully in more than one way. And I think so. Role, person, gift, all are true. All are true because all are necessary aspects of the body. And so he says here, on the contrary, right? And on the contrary to what? Right? To this statement of, I don't need you. On the contrary, those parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable. So let's just kind of highlight that. Those parts of the body that seem to be weaker. Paul has something in mind here. And we could say, what part of the body seems to be weaker, right? And, you know, just for illustration's sake, we could say a toe or a pinky or something like that. Your earlobe. Whatever it might be. Those parts of the body seem to be weaker. Notice that Paul doesn't actually get in here and start naming things. Because the point of this illustration is not to pick a part of the body. The point of this illustration is to make the person listening say, who do I think is weaker? That is the point of this illustration. Which seem to be weaker to me? Here we go. Whatever that might be, those parts of the bodies, they are indispensable. And I'm going to put the correction. So I'll put the red as the category and kind of the blue as the correction to the thought. They seem to be weaker. That's not true. They're actually indispensable. And so he's not done, right? That just means that this illustration is going to build the parts that we think are less honorable. And again, it's not so much about what part, what person, what role, what gift, but which one do you think is less honorable? Those we treat with special honor. And just thinking out, like he's kind of making an example about the actual human body again, right? So the weak parts of the body are indispensable. And then the less honorable parts of the body we treat with special honor, right? They get covered up or taken care of in a special way. Because the next one's really about getting taken care of. So just special treatment. And I don't need to be specific. You can figure that out. And here we go. The parts that are unpresentable. Parts that are unpresentable. How do we deal with those? They are treated with special modesty, right? And obviously, right, there are parts of the body that you can't present to public, and so we treat them with special modesty, which is really, again, an act of honor. And so here are these kind of three things that are brought in: indispensable, special honor, special modesty, special treatment. Special treatment. They're raised up. They're honored. They're special, and yet they are the very things that we consider to be weak, consider to be less honorable, consider to be unpresentable. Okay, so this part right here is the body illustration again. So the first one's kind of a hypothetical illustration. This one is illustrating special treatment for, and I'm going to put in another kind of biblical term, the least of these. Those parts of the body that aren't viewed in a special way. That text is there. While. So this whole thing from 22 down to the end of 23 is true. And then this while stands in opposition to that. Our presentable parts need no special treatment. So again, which part? The presentable parts, and kind of solution here. No special treatment. No, keyword there. No special treatment. So the pieces of the body that seem to be presentable, that seem to be honorable, they get no special treatment. But the parts that seem to be weaker or unpresentable, they get the special treatment. So he's making a simple illustration with the body, and of course, be careful with any illustration. You could push it and make it not true. You could say, well, that's not culturally specific, but don't miss the point of the illustration, right? And so he says, but, big word here, and this but doesn't really, it's not really like saying that he's making a contrary, a contrary point, but it really building on what comes before. And when you think about the fact that Paul's just kind of speaking here, that makes sense. The other thing that makes sense is just that, if anything, the but stands in opposition to Corinthian thought. And here's the antithetical point to kind of Corinthian thought. God has put the body together, giving greater honor to the parts that lacked it. So I have a purpose. If I were to ask, why has God done this? Why has he given greater honor to the parts that lacked it? So that there should be no division in the body. No division in the body. That is why. This balancing of honor in verses 22 through 23 help us to not have division in the body, because we're raising up that which is low and we're not giving special treatment to that which is high, right? That's the idea here. But again, that its parts should have equal concern for each other. So instead of division, we want equal concern for each other. We don't want to elevate and spend all of our time and attention on a particular gift of the church, on a particular role, on a particular person. Whenever a church gets this way, this is a dangerous thing. We don't want the body to be all about one person, unless that one person or whatever gift or role is Christ. If we make it about anything else, we're gonna fall apart. God has actually intentionally created the body in such a way that we give greater honor to the parts that lack it, so that there's no division, so that we have equal concern for each other. All right, so that gives us the next section here, which is God's purposes, right? God's purposes in the body. And it's equality of concern. Equality of concern. And then he says, kind of to close it all out, another example, and a really good one. If one part suffers, then every part suffers with it. That's how the actual body works. If one part is honored, then every part rejoices with it. So those are our blue if-then statements, right? If, then. Every part rejoices with it. So suffering, one part suffers, then every part suffers. One part honored, every part rejoices with it. This is what it means to be unified. It means that there is a sharing of suffering and a sharing of joy. One picture I think that for us works really well for this is the concept of a family. When it's one person's birthday, we all celebrate. But when one person dies, we all suffer. And that is a beautiful picture of the church, which gives us a really great idea for what the church is supposed to be. A place of shared suffering and shared joy, shared honor. And to drive the body analogy home, final verse right here brings it back to Christ. You are part of a body. And that body is the body of Christ. You are, plural you, right? That one should be obvious. You are the body of Christ, and each one of you. And so he's thinking now individually, each one of you is a part of it. Each one of you is a part of it. Whoops. And so if you wanted to go again for you, why should we not narrowly define this as gift or person or role? Because every part of the body has a gift and has a role, but you are also the persons who make up the body. And so we kind of see all three at the end of the day. But the point here is not so much that, but really the body of Christ. We are the body of Christ. That's whose body we belong to. That's whose body we are part of. And so again, back to the family picture, let's suffer with one another. Let's rejoice with one another. And particularly here, let us give honor to those who lack honor. Let's not overly honor those who naturally have it by virtue of their position. And, just in my mind, the way that this plays out is, pastors and directors, at Westside Church, they're already on a pedestal. So we're not going to elevate them further. And instead, we're going to do our best to give honor to those who are going unnoticed in the body.